Did you share things with others when you were a child?
Yes, I often shared toys and books with my siblings and classmates. My parents encouraged me to take turns with our family computer, which taught me early on that sharing strengthens relationships. I remember trading colored pencils with friends during art class. It made activities more enjoyable and helped us bond.
Do you think sharing is important?
Absolutely. Sharing fosters trust and cooperation in communities. For instance, carpooling reduces traffic while splitting household chores creates harmony in families. Even in workplaces, sharing ideas leads to better teamwork and innovation. Fundamentally, it's a social skill that benefits everyone.
What kinds of things do people usually share?
People commonly share tangible items like food, clothes, or tools, especially in close-knit neighborhoods. Digitally, we share photos, opinions, and recommendations through social media. More importantly, people share intangible things, advice during difficult times or laughter and happy moments, which often matter most.
Is there anything you don't like to share?
I'm hesitant to share personal items like toothbrushes or headphones due to hygiene preferences. Similarly, I avoid oversharing private matters online. While I'm generous with most things, maintaining boundaries around personal space and sensitive information is equally important to me.
Do people in your country like to share?
Yes, generosity is deeply rooted in our culture. During festivals, families exchange homemade sweets with neighbors, and community pantries for sharing surplus food have become popular. Even strangers willingly share directions or help carry heavy items. It's a point of collective pride. I'd like to talk about a time when I had to share my home office space with my younger brother during the pandemic lockdowns. This became a significant experience that taught me valuable lessons about adaptability and compromise. The item in question wasn't just a physical space, but essentially all the resources that came with it: my desk, computer, and even the Wi-Fi bandwidth. My brother, who is 5 years younger, needed the space for his online university classes while I required it for my remote work as a content writer. We found ourselves in this situation because our family's apartment had limited rooms, and the sudden shift to remote work and study caught everyone unprepared. The living room was too noisy for concentration, and the kitchen table wasn't ergonomic for long hours of use, leaving my home office as the only viable option for both of us. Initially, I resented having to share what had always been my private domain. The first week was particularly frustrating. We created a color-coded timetable on the whiteboard, dividing the day into strict slots. My brother's lectures often overran, cutting into my scheduled work time, while my client calls disrupted his note-taking. The tension peaked when we both had overlapping Zoom meetings and had to take turns using the quiet balcony. I remember feeling disproportionately irritated by small things, like how he organized the desk drawers or left textbook annotations on my notepads. However, as weeks turned into months, we developed an unexpected rhythm. We started sharing more than just space. We shared solutions. I taught him productivity hacks like the Pomodoro technique, while he showed me educational apps that improved my research efficiency. We invested in a monitor splitter to extend the screen, allowing us to work side by side during non-meeting hours. The physical proximity led to emotional closeness too. Lunch breaks became brainstorming sessions where we discussed his marketing coursework and my writing projects. What began as an inconvenience transformed into one of the most collaborative periods of our relationship. I came to appreciate how sharing forced us to communicate needs clearly and respect boundaries, skills that proved invaluable when we later faced workplace team projects. While I certainly celebrated having the office to myself again when colleges reopened, I now miss those days of spontaneous idea exchanges. This experience reshaped my understanding of sharing. It's not merely about dividing resources, but about multiplying opportunities for growth. The office became a microcosm of how shared spaces, when managed with patience and creativity, can foster unexpected synergies. Looking back, I realized we weren't just sharing a room. We were sharing perspectives, skills, and a unique chapter of our lives that brought us closer as siblings and as individuals navigating unprecedented times together.
How has the concept of sharing evolved in modern society compared to the past?
The concept of sharing has undergone a radical transformation due to technological advancements and shifting societal values. Traditionally, sharing was largely confined to physical objects within close-knit communities, neighbors borrowing tools, families pooling resources, or children exchanging toys in schoolyards. This form of sharing was inherently localized and built on personal relationships. However, the digital revolution has expanded sharing into an impersonal, global phenomenon. Platforms like Airbnb and Uber have commercialized sharing under the gig economy, where strangers share homes or car rides for profit. Social media has redefined emotional sharing, with people broadcasting personal milestones to hundreds of acquaintances rather than confiding in a select few. Interestingly, while technology enables wider sharing networks, it has also diluted the intimacy of shared experiences. Where families once shared meals without distractions, many now eat while scrolling through individual devices. Yet positive developments like open-source software and Creative Commons licensing demonstrate how modern sharing can drive innovation. Wikipedia, for instance, thrives on collective knowledge sharing, a concept unimaginable before the Internet. Environmental concerns have also reshaped sharing. Library of Things initiatives and clothing swaps promote sustainability. Ultimately, modern sharing balances convenience with detachment, offering unprecedented access but sometimes at the cost of deeper connections that characterize traditional sharing cultures.
What are the psychological benefits of sharing for individuals and communities?
Sharing yields profound psychological benefits that operate on both individual and collective levels. On a personal scale, sharing activates the brain's reward system. Studies show that donating money or time triggers the same dopamine release as receiving gifts. This explains why people feel intrinsic satisfaction when volunteering or helping strangers. Sharing also alleviates stress by fostering social bonds. When individuals share problems with trusted confidants, cortisol levels decrease and emotional resilience improves. Children who learn to share early develop stronger empathy and conflict resolution skills, which correlate with higher emotional intelligence in adulthood. For communities, shared experiences create social cohesion. Collective rituals, from potluck dinners to public celebrations, strengthen group identity and reduce isolation. During crises like natural disasters, communities that prioritize resource sharing recover faster psychologically, as mutual aid restores a sense of agency and trust. Notably, the helper's high phenomenon suggests that those who give support often gain greater mental health benefits than recipients. However, the psychology of sharing isn't universally positive. Cultural differences shape perceptions. In individualistic societies, oversharing may be seen as intrusive, whereas collectivist cultures view it as normative. Understanding these nuances is key to harnessing sharing's full psychological potential.
Do you think excessive sharing on social media has more advantages or disadvantages?
The culture of excessive social media sharing presents a complex interplay of benefits and drawbacks. On one hand, it democratizes information exchange. Activists use platforms to share urgent news globally, and marginalized groups amplify their voices through viral campaigns. During the pandemic, shared health protocols saved lives, while crowdfunding platforms enabled strangers to support medical emergencies. Social media sharing also preserves cultural heritage. Indigenous communities now document traditions for future generations. However, the disadvantages are equally significant. Oversharing erodes privacy. Geotagged posts enable stalking, and personal data becomes commodified by corporations. Psychologically, curated sharing fuels comparison anxiety. Studies link excessive social media use to depression, as users measure their lives against unrealistic highlights. Relationships suffer when couples argue over online interactions, and sharing raises ethical concerns about consent. The sheer volume of shared misinformation, from health myths to political propaganda, has destabilized societies. Ultimately, the scale tips toward disadvantages when sharing lacks intentionality. Mindless scrolling and reactive posting differ vastly from purposeful sharing that educates or connects. Establishing digital boundaries, like designated offline hours or fact-checking before reposting, can mitigate harms while preserving social media's connective potential.
How can governments encourage sharing to address societal issues like poverty or environmental crises?
Governments can institutionalize sharing through policy frameworks that incentivize collective action. For poverty alleviation, public libraries could expand beyond books to include tool libraries, where low-income families borrow equipment for home repairs. Tax breaks for businesses adopting sharing models, like co-working spaces that reduce overhead costs, would stimulate collaborative economies. During housing shortages, governments might subsidize co-living arrangements where seniors and students share homes, addressing loneliness and affordability simultaneously. Environmental crises demand large-scale, resource-sharing systems. Municipalities could implement centralized platforms for sharing excess food from supermarkets with shelters, reducing waste while feeding the hungry. Car-sharing lanes with toll discounts would decrease emissions, and repair cafes funded by local councils could extend product lifespans. Legislation requiring manufacturers to share spare parts data would empower third-party repairs, challenging planned obsolescence. Successful examples exist. Seoul's Sharing City initiative supports over 1,200 sharing organizations, from communal gardens to shared childcare. Finland's education system shares open access textbooks nationwide, cutting costs and inequality. However, such programs require public trust. Governments must ensure transparency in data sharing and equitable access to avoid exacerbating divides. By framing sharing as civic responsibility rather than charity, policies can transform it from individual choice to collective norm.
Will the sharing economy replace traditional ownership in the future? Discuss with examples.
The sharing economy is unlikely to fully replace ownership but will significantly reshape consumption patterns, particularly among younger generations. Already, urban millennials prefer accessing over owning. Platforms like Spotify, Kindle Unlimited, and Zipcar thrive by monetizing shared access. In commercial sectors, co-working spaces like WeWork demonstrate how businesses prioritize flexibility over long-term leases. Even luxury markets are adapting. Rent the Runway allows users to share designer apparel for special occasions without purchase. However, psychological and practical barriers limit universal adoption. Ownership provides emotional security. Many derive pride from owning homes or heirlooms that reflect identity. Shared housing, while cost-effective, can't replicate the autonomy of private ownership. Durability concerns also persist. Shared bicycles often suffer vandalism, and studies show people treat rented items less carefully than personal possessions. Sector-specific shifts are more plausible. Urban areas may embrace shared transportation, while rural communities retain ownership due to limited infrastructure. The rise of NFTs ironically highlights how digital ownership is being redefined even as physical sharing grows. Hybrid models will likely dominate. Subscription-based car leases that bundle insurance and maintenance, for instance, blend sharing's convenience with ownership's predictability. The future belongs not to replacement, but to reimagined relationships with property, where sharing complements rather than supplants ownership.